Listen, this is the situation. An invading army, modern rifles, cannons, European officers, confident, arrogant, moving through a mountain pass. Their plan, force, noise, discipline. Their mistake, assuming the ground was neutral. Our side understood one thing simpler and truer than any textbook. Terrain is a weapon. We held the heights. We chose the hour. We opened the trap. When the rifles fired, it became obvious who had prepared and who had marched into a coffin. In less than a day, an expeditionary force ceased to be an expeditionary force. It vanished. This is the Battle of Gundet. Not a defeat, not a tragedy. A calculated destruction. Pay attention. The year was 1875. The Red Sea coast was restless, and the Egyptian Khedive was expanding under Ismail Pasha, his eyes set on Ethiopia. He had modern weapons, European advisors, and a belief that Africa's highlands were waiting to be conquered. His intelligence told him Ethiopia was fractured, tribal, primitive. His maps showed passes and valleys as simple obstacles, not traps. And that single assumption would erase an army. To the north, Emperor Yohannes IV had just unified the Tigrayan highlands. He understood war the way a surgeon understands anatomy, precise, methodical, and patient. He didn't move troops first. He moved information. Scouts, spies, and priests along trade routes watched every Egyptian supply line. When the invaders left Massawa, Yohannes already knew their strength, their formation, their morale, their weakness. He didn't plan a defense. He planned an execution. The invading force was commanded by Arakil Bey and Prince Hassan Pasha, 6,000 men trained by European officers, equipped with Remington rifles, artillery, and logistical support from Cairo. They moved southward through the Barca Valley, confident they would crush any resistance. But confidence is not strategy. In their arrogance, they relied on faulty intelligence reports, claiming the Ethiopian terrain was open, that local tribes would surrender, and that Yohannes would flee once his lines were breached. They didn't understand the ground. The Ethiopian highlands were not open fields. They were vertical labyrinths of rock, ridge, and ravine. Every path was a funnel. Every slope was a hidden firing point. Every silence, a warning. Yohannes knew their doctrine. European officers would prioritize formation, discipline, and forward firepower. He countered it with chaos terrain that broke formation, sound that distorted command, and timing that denied retreat. It wasn't bravery, it was science. From the moment the Egyptians left the lowlands, Ethiopian scouts shadowed them unseen, unheard. They documented supply lines, morale levels, and the intervals between rest stops. Each night, campfires lit up valleys like targets on a map. Each day, the soldiers climbed higher, thinner air reducing endurance, morale evaporating. Yohannes chose the Gundet Pass, a narrow valley deep within the highlands, as the execution ground. He positioned thousands of warriors along the ridges, armed not just with rifles, but with the geometry of the land itself. Every ridge, every stone, every choke point was marked and memorized. He waited. He let them come. By November 15th, the Egyptian force entered the pass. Weather, fog, thin air, poor visibility. Command believed they were close to victory. They were already inside the kill zone. No local guides, no rear security, no idea that their sound carried upward for miles. Ethiopian scouts on the cliffs could count every cannon. When the last Egyptian column entered the pass, runners delivered a single coded message to Yohannes. The coffin is closed. The Egyptian formation stretched nearly 2 kilometers infantry in front, artillery wagons in the center, cavalry at the rear. On paper, it looked disciplined. In terrain like Gundet, it looked suicidal. From above, Yohannes and Ras Alula Engida observed in silence. They waited for the sun to crest the ridge. That was the signal. At 0700 hours, the first horn sounded deep, guttural, echoing through the valley. Then another, then 10,000. The sound wasn't just a signal. It was a weapon. The Egyptian vanguard froze, believing it was an ambush alarm. It was. They raised rifles toward the ridges, but the angles betrayed them. Before they could aim, the sky erupted in fire. Gunfire, boulders, arrows, and a wall of sound. The first volley shattered the front ranks. The second destroyed communication. Within minutes, Egyptian officers were shouting conflicting orders. Forward, backward, hold, retreat. No one knew. Drums replaced command. Smoke replaced clarity. Discipline dissolved. From both sides of the pass, Ethiopian fighters descended. Some used captured rifles, others used spears and swords. But every strike came from elevation. Egyptian cannon fire was useless, no clear targets, no trajectory. Artillery meant for open battlefields became dead weight. When they tried to deploy, teams were cut down by snipers hidden in rock crevices. The Egyptian line collapsed inward. Wagons blocked the retreat. Horses panicked, trampling their own men. Every exit funneled back into death. An Egyptian officer's final report, later recovered, read, "We were firing into fog. We could not see them. Only the mountains spoke." Within 1 hour, coordination was gone. Within 2, command structure ceased. By midday, the entire army had ceased to function as a unit. The sound of rifles gave way to screams, the smell of black powder replaced by blood and dust. Ras Alula's forces advanced from the eastern ridge, encircling the survivors. Cavalry units cut off the rear column, preventing any withdrawal. It was not a chase. It was containment. When the last Egyptian banner fell, silence returned to the pass. 6,000 men had entered. Almost none remained. No quarter was given. No prisoners taken. Not out of cruelty, but strategy. Yohannes couldn't risk the enemy regrouping. He ended the campaign in 1 day. Reports reached Cairo weeks later. The Khedive refused to believe it. An entire expeditionary force armed with Europe's finest, erased by highlanders with no industrial support. But this was not luck. It was operational mastery. Yohannes had outthought, outmoved, and outpositioned a modern military. He understood that terrain, morale, and patience could defeat technology. Captured cannons and rifles were paraded through Ethiopian camps, not as trophies, but as resources. Yohannes ordered them cleaned, repaired, and studied. He understood the psychological message. Egypt's weapons now belong to Ethiopia. The Khedive's generals tried to rewrite the story, calling it misfortune, weather, bad intelligence. But no report could hide the truth. They underestimated their opponent. They assumed Africa would kneel. Instead, they found that Africa was studying, learning, evolving. In the years that followed, Ethiopia became a fortress. Every mountain pass, every valley, every route was mapped with mathematical precision. And when Egypt tried again at Gura, they met the same result. The Battle of Gundet was not a miracle. It was the logical conclusion of arrogance meeting preparation. The Battle of Gundet reshaped the psychology of warfare in Africa. It proved that the continent's commanders could not only resist, but dismantle modern invasions using intellect over machinery. European officers studied Gundet's maps in silence. They called it anomaly. They were wrong. It was a doctrine. Yohannes IV and Ras Alula didn't just defend Ethiopia. They defined a template for asymmetric resistance. Their strategy? Control the terrain, control the timing, control the enemy's belief. Egypt never fully recovered its pride after Gundet. The defeat exposed cracks in its modernization, the illusion that imported weapons could replace indigenous intelligence. It was a warning to every empire that came after. For Ethiopia, Gundet became a symbol proof that no foreign power, however armed, could dictate terms on African soil without understanding it. This victory, like Adwa years later, was not born from desperation. It was born from discipline. And that's the difference. Gundet wasn't just a battle, it was a message, a military thesis written in silence, stone, and blood. Remember this. They came with rifles and flags. We answered with patience and the land itself. They thought they were advancing. They were walking into geometry, into precision, into death. The Battle of Gundet, not a story of survival, a story of superiority. A war won before it was fought. A trap disguised as terrain. A lesson written in the language of command.